Hey guys, it's Craig here. Welcome to Homebrew Wednesday 100. And this episode is called If You Ask Me. Cheers. And yes, I am double-fisted. Somebody asked me how often this happens, and to be quite honest, it only happens when I do these Homebrew Wednesdays, because lots of times I pour a glass of wine and then I think, oh, I'm going to do my Homebrew Wednesday video and I want to have a beer in that video, because beer is sort of the thing this is all based on. So got loads of questions yesterday from you guys, a lot more than I thought I would. And so I basically took the ones that had the higher ratings or had ratings at all. And I answered them. I got over 200 questions. So I don't think there's any way I could answer all of them in one day like this, given this amount of time. So there are some other ones in there that won't get answered today that I would like to answer. So if your question didn't get answered in this video, don't worry. I'll probably still answer it in another video. I can only do so much in 24 hours. Okay. So far the preparation time for this video has been hours, and I haven't even made it yet. So here we go. First of all, before we get started answering these questions, I want to make sure, absolutely sure, that we thank S.J. Poor for coming up with the Homebrew Wednesday concept. Many, many of us are doing this now, and I'm frankly very proud to be part of it. So cheers to S.J. Poor. Raise your glasses and the whole bit. Really. A whole bunch of people just raised their glass all at the same time. Isn't that neat? No, this is not live. Okay, let's get to the questions, because we've got lots of them. As I said, if your question didn't get answered, I will answer it in another video. I basically looked at the ratings, and I based my choices on that. Plus, I threw in some questions that didn't have any ratings, because I felt that I wanted to answer them anyway. Okay? All right, let's get going here. I've got the questions over here, and here we go. Russell Giles says, tell us the story of the first time you got really, really drunk. How old was you? Where was you? I think that would be interesting. 17. Okay. I probably drank something when I was in my band when I was 15. I think I got drunk on cherry Coke and rum or something. I don't know. Something of that effect anyway. But I don't remember getting really drunk. I think I had a couple of drinks and then thought I was really drunk and started acting really stupid and whatnot. The first time I got, and the only time I got this drunk, was when my former father-in-law, who's deceased now, Sid, gave me a bottle of Swish that he had made. And I don't know how you do this. You get a barrel or something and you fill it with water, and I guess all the stuff comes out of the wood because it's been used. It's they've had gin or rum or something stored in here for so long, and apparently comes out and it ferments and it turns into Swish, which is a pretty strong 120 proof, rum or rye or whatever it was. He gave me a bottle of that for Christmas. He said, "Now be careful with this. Be careful." So I took it home and I got some eggnog. It was Christmas time. And I mixed it with rum and eggnog is basically what I was drinking. And I don't know. I lost several hours of time. Don't remember much of it. And I went to bed, and at some point I woke up covered in puke. All over my bed, all over everything, all over the floor. I must have just, spewed it all over. And I got up, and I was living at home at the time, and I was about 20 years old. And so I came upstairs and I asked my mom to help me. And she said, "No, it's your fault. You got drunk. You can clean it up. I'm not cleaning up all that crap. I'm not cleaning that up after you. No way." So I fell asleep on the couch upstairs and left it all down there. And I woke up later and I felt like death. It was the worst feeling I had ever had. I think I had alcohol poisoning. I was trembling. I couldn't, oh, it was just awful. Awful. And it was so awful that about a year after that, I could not touch alcohol. I could not take a sip of beer or anything, because as soon as I did, I would panic because I was so afraid of that feeling that I had. And that's my one and only memory of being really drunk. I mean, that's as drunk as I've ever been. Matt says, here's one, Craig. The very first Cooper's beer kit you brewed up. I've pondered this a long while. I don't remember, to be quite honest. It was probably a draft. It was probably a Cooper's draft. Brass Knuckle Ride says, ahoy! I may be wrong, but if I remember correctly, you said in some video that your father brewed beer at home, mainly for beer price issues. So I was wondering, related to that, what was your relationship to the alcohol like when you were a kid or young? Basically, what he's asking me is, did my parents allow me to drink alcohol? No, my parents were not in favor of us kids touching any alcohol. As a matter of fact, I used to try to take a swig out of my dad's beer, and he would say he wouldn't let me. However, he often sent me to the fridge politely. Craig, could you go get me a beer, please? And so on the way back from the fridge, of course, I would open it for him, because they weren't twist-offs. They were stubbies, actually. And on the way back from the fridge with this open beer, I would often take a few swigs out of the top before I gave it to him, and he never knew. Professor says, what was your worst home brewing experience? I don't really have any really bad experiences. I mean, it's not like I ever spent, hundreds of dollars and hours of time making something that turned out to be a total catastrophe. Probably when I was away on holidays, and I got a phone call from somebody that my homebrew, my fermenter was leaking, and I'm like 1,000 miles away, and it's leaking. So I had to get that person to bottle the beer for me, and he didn't know anything about how to do it. So I had to tell him over the phone how to do it, and I was like, oh my God, he's not going to do it right. He's going to overprime the bottles or something, and I worried about it the whole time I was gone, because I was looking forward to getting home and bottling that up and having some nice beer. So other than that, there's other questions coming up regarding my experiences with home brewing, so we'll wait until we get to those. Lee sometimes says, hello, Craig. You ever thought of starting your own brewery? I have not got the know-how or the balls to do that, unfortunately. And, I mean, it's not like every Tom, Dick, and Harry can set up their own brewery. What I have thought of doing, and I don't know whether I'll ever get around to doing this, but it is kind of a dream of mine, is to open a homebrew supply store. But who knows if that would ever take off anyways, because we've got 2 of them in the city, actually 3. And why would anyone, I mean, we've already got establishments here. I don't think it would work. So the brewery, I don't know. I doubt it. But you never know. Never say never. Matthew Harrison says, I know you're into conspiracies. How about you talk about that? Oh, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. If I was, you'd know by now, because I would have been talking about all that stuff on my channel. However, I do a lot more than just watching the news. In fact, I don't watch the news. I don't have a television. We don't have one anymore. And it's not because we can't afford the bill. It's just that we've got rid of it. Just like on Poltergeist, at the end of the movie where they shoved that television out the door. That's what we've done. It's I can't stand television. I know there's probably a few good shows on. I watched Lost on Netflix or wherever it was, wherever I got it from. Conspiracies exist. Conspiracy theories exist. And I was going to do a whole separate video on this, and I still might. But my main point is, you know, if you trust somebody, then there's no reason for you to guess about what they're doing. And the only reason that you would ever have to sit around and make up theories is if that there's a good reason why you can't trust that person. And that's as far as I'm going to go. And I think most of you know what I mean. Person or people. Let's move on. Hey Craig, Lucas here. Been watching you for years and love you to death. Question, what do you do with the beer you brew? It seems as if you've always got some going. Do you give any away? If so, do you ask that they trade you bottles, kegs? I'd like to brew once a week or more if I could. The problem is finding out how to get rid of it and brew in a cost-effective manner. You're an inspiration, sir. Thanks again. Well, as far as getting rid of the beer goes, you can move in beside me and we won't have any problems. No. I got neighbors that enjoy some home brews with me once in a while. I have a couple of friends who pop by and I give them some beers. And so, you know, I like to keep a pipeline. I like to try to keep at least two batches ahead of myself. So that if something happens to a batch and it's not drinkable for any reason, which doesn't happen very often at all, but if it did, I would have another batch on the way. There's other questions pertaining to this later on, so we'll just wait for those. But I drink it and I give some of it away to friends, and we have some beers out front on the front steps. I'll bring out the keg and we'll pour a few brewskis, and in the winter, maybe I won't brew as often because I don't have as many neighbors sitting outside. But, you know, I might bottle some and take it to a friend's house and we'll have some beers. I mean, and you know what? I will admit, I drink quite a bit. I'm not a drunk by any stretch of the imagination, but I can throw back my share of this stuff and it doesn't affect me. I don't get a hangover the next day. By the way, I should have warned you, this video is going to be long. Let's move. What's the best beer you have ever made? The first thing that came to my mind when I read that question, and some of the names, by the way, I didn't want to pronounce because I would probably get them wrong. So, of the people who posted these questions, first thing that comes to my mind is my first all grain beer. That was a wonderful beer. But you know, in all fairness, it could have been just because I put so much effort into it. You know, I was getting ready to make it, and I had all my equipment ready. I had my mash tun, my pots, my stir sticks, and you know, everything else, my little measuring sticks, all my equipment. Plus, I was filming it, and it's on YouTube. It's called All Grain on the Stove, and I was nervous. I was nervous, and I was afraid I was going to do something wrong. I had Immoladius, one of our homebrew buddies, on Skype with me on my iPad, guiding me through some of the sparging procedures and some of the things that, you know, the mashing and whatnot, helping me, making sure I was, you know, not running into any problems. I had problems with my temperature. My strike water wasn't hot enough. I had to, you know, I had to bring some of the stuff out, heat it up, and put it back into the mash tun, and you know, then there was the boil and everything. But by the time I was finished brewing that beer and filming it, I thought it was not going to turn out at all, and I just thought, I'm never doing this again. But you know, when it was finally ready and I took that first sip, and you saw the video, some of you might have saw the video of me taking that first sip, I was absolutely amazed. It was delicious. And I mean, it was my style of beer too. I love the style. I can't remember what the heck it was. So I don't know, maybe it's not the best beer I ever made, but to me, man, at that moment, it was the best beer I ever made. Just because of everything I'd gone through, and it been so, you know, it was so time for me to do all grain. And I was just so happy that it turned out. It was good beer.
Exist says, Craig, can you tell us about some of your more memorable misadventures in home brewing, be it infected batches, where you think you went wrong, or recipes you put together that just didn't turn out as good as you hoped?
Most of my home brewing career has been really just brewing up the kits. It's only been in the last few years that I started experimenting with grains and hops and extracts and other things, you know. One thing I do remember is I brewed up a batch. This is years ago. Man, this could have been 15 years ago, maybe longer. I brewed up a batch of beer in my kitchen. It was a kit, you know. And I only had one fermenter because everything was so simple back then. I mean, I wasn't doing this, you know. And my fermenter had a spigot because I used to bottle my beer out of the spigot with a hose and a bottling wand or whatever you call those things. So I put my beer and my wort in this thing and put the lid on, and lo and behold, the damn spigot was leaking from like around where it screws on. You know how you put it in the hole and you screw it on from the other side? And it wasn't screwed on tight enough. So and it was sort of this thing was dripping. I was panicking. Oh my God, what am I going to do? My wort is in here. My spigot, I tried to turn it around to get it to tighten. It wouldn't tighten. The only way to tighten it was to grab the thing from the other side, the nut, and turn it and tighten it. Well, it was full of beer. So what did I do? I panicked. And so I took my sanitizer at the time, which was sodium metabisulfite, and I rubbed it all over, and it was hot this day, and I was sweating on everything, and plus with this going on, I was just, you know, uber sweating. I rubbed sanitizer. I washed my arm with soap and water, and then I rubbed it with sanitizer, and then I rinsed it, because you had to rinse the sodium metabisulfite or it'll kill your yeast. Rinsed it off, and I put my whole arm into the wort. You guys are gonna please don't post this in the forums. I'd put my whole arm into the fermenter, down into the wort, and tightened the little nut, and the thing stopped leaking, and pulled out my arm, and I thought to myself, this is never going to work. I'm going to get an infection, and that's terrible. But on the positive side, I thought, well, a lot of sweat went into this homebrew, literally. The other time was when it was 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, some late time, and I was brewing a batch of beer, and I dropped the yeast package all over the floor, and I only had one yeast package. I didn't stock up on things like I do now. I bought the kit, brought it home, and I made it. You know, that's the way it was back then. I dropped it, and it went all over the floor. Here I am at 4 o'clock in the morning with wort that's ready to be pitched onto. And I've dropped the yeast package, and I have no more yeast packages. What do I do? Well, I was told if I left that any longer than a few hours, it would get infected. So the only choice, I had two choices. One, pour it down the drain. Two, try to scrape the yeast all up off the floor and pitch it. What would you have done? I thought, what the hell? Here's an experiment. Let's try this. I'll scoop this up off the floor, and I'll pitch it. The next day, I went out and bought a second fermenter and a second batch, and I put another batch down just in case, because I did not expect that to work. You know what? nothing happened to it. It didn't, I mean, it fermented and it worked out fine. Nothing bad happened to it. Don't try this at home, folks, but you know what? That was a nightmare.
He also says, you've told us that cost was the biggest factor getting you started in home brewing. If decent beer was suddenly more affordable, comparable to the cost of a kit and kilo, would you continue to still make all your beer?
No, I wouldn't. I would still make beer, but I wouldn't make all of my beer that I consume. I would buy beer. If I could get decent beer, like good beer, for the same price as I can make beer, then you know why would you even brew beer, especially if you're doing it the simple way, the easy way, from kits. You know, I brew beer kits because it's cheaper than buying beer. So if you can use a little logic and figure that one out, if I could buy beer for that cheap, I probably wouldn't make beer kits. Mind you, some of the kits that I've made where you add your own hops and you do things to it are very nice, and I would not stop home brewing. I would probably just brew all grain, and it would be like once a month or something. I would brew all grain beer, or extract, like partial extract, like with hops and grains and stuff, just because I enjoy the process of doing it. And you know, it's home brew. I mean, what the hell? I mean, nothing beats home brew, right? But I would be making less beer if I could buy it for a decent price. Yeah.
Derpherds says, Craig, how does your significant other feel about your home brews? Does she drink them with you? Do you brew anything special or different for her? Happy Homebrew Wednesday.
Happy Homebrew Wednesday, sir. My wife hates beer, for one thing. Hates it. She's just not a beer drinker at all. And when beer has more flavor than you're used to, I mean, when you buy beer and you know you cheap stuff, and then you make your own, and it's got so much more flavor and hop flavors and things, they hate that even more. They're like, this is worse than the stuff you buy, because the stuff you buy has no flavor. So no, she doesn't like my beer. Or any beer. And she's okay with my wine, but she doesn't, she's got a different palate. She's not much of a drinker anyway. So when she's drinking something, it's gotta taste good. It's gotta be like, like one of those chocolate flavored, things, or whatever they're called, drinks that they make, that looks like chocolate milk. And I don't even know what they're called because I don't drink those. She doesn't know. But she's fine with the fact that I home brew. She's fine with that. It saves money. She doesn't like the smell when I boil hops. She hates that, but she deals with it. She's not, telling me not to do it. There's a certain amount of paraphernalia, mess, clutter that goes along with brewing beer. She doesn't mind. She's great that way. She's all for it. I don't think she would feel she was married to the same person if I didn't make my own beer.
Cheshire Homebrew? What is your greatest sporting moment as a spectator? Cheers.
Well, first of all, I'm not into sports at all. I'm just not interested. Nothing against them or anything. I just personally don't have an interest in it. But I do have a moment, a sporting moment that you'll find amusing, given that, it's me. I remember with my grade 2 class, we went to a hockey game. And the hockey game was being televised. It wasn't live, but it was being recorded. And so I was looking for the cameras. I've always been interested in cameras, and television. And so I found one of the camera guys. I said, can I go, I want to walk over there and look at the camera. So I went over and I was standing beside the guy looking at him. He was looking at me like, what are you doing? And I just said, I'm sorry to bother you, sir, but I'm interested in cameras. Would you mind if I, watched you for a while? He said, no, it's fine. Go ahead, watch, And I said, and could you please put me on the camera at some point? He says, I sure can. So I stood there for a while, I watched him, and then I was watching what was going on and looking back at where I was supposed to be sitting, and then eventually I went back to my seat. I was thrilled. I don't know. I think it was a hockey game. I don't know what the hell was going on the ice. I didn't give two beans about that. I was more interested in the camera. And when the game was televised, when it came on television, I was watching. And the only reason I was watching it is because I was waiting for that moment where I was on camera. And sure enough, he lived up to his promise. There I was on television, staring this camera guy up and down, going, oh, look at this camera. This is awesome. So that is my most memorable sporting event moment. I'm just not into those things. That's all.
Occasional Success says, hi, Craig. Kit and Kilo, you suggest 700/500 maltodextrin dextrose mix. Have you tried other combinations that also work?
Okay, well, first of all, that's not the right combination. When I do a Kit Kilo style beer, and I still do them, but I don't do it really Kit Kilo, I use 500 grams of liquid malt extract. 500 grams of dry malt extract and 700 grams of dextrose. Okay? I know that's a lot of dextrose, and if you don't want it, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I just, I'm kicking up the alcohol content a little bit. That's my 5 and 7 method. 500 dry malt extract, I always get those mixed up, at 700 grams dextrose. And you could add a couple of hundred, maybe 300 grams of maltodextrin as well, which helps a lot. I didn't add that to this, and that's why we've got not a lot of head retention going on in this beer. That's what I use. Other combinations, you could use all dry malt extract. Forget about the dextrose. It's not really a great thing to put into your beer. But the dry malt extract can be expensive. You're better off buying some bulk liquid malt extract if you can find it cheap enough. I can get it really cheap. And adding that to your beer kits instead of dextrose or dry malt. Because if you can get the liquid stuff really cheap, Bob's your uncle, okay? And, store it in the fridge and just use it up within the next few months and you'll be fine.
PFC Brewery says, Craig, what is your pipeline like? Brewing schedule? How long do you let brews ferment and age? How often do you brew?
Right. Well, this is a little bit related to a question earlier that, how much, what do I do with all the beer I make and stuff like that. My pipeline basically consists of a couple of batches, just in case one goes bad and I've got a backup ready. I brew at this point in time. I'm brewing a lot of kits, but soon I'm going to be doing more extract, partial extract, and some all grain as well. I brew about once every probably week and a half, I'd say. Sometimes more, sometimes once a week. And when you do a Friday night thing like I do, a live broadcast, you can put back a couple of gallons of beer in 10 hours. It's not a hard thing to do. Which brings me to another question that we're going to be dealing with in a few minutes. The guy asked me about hangovers. Well, we'll get to that in a bit. Let's move on here.
Dalmatic says, which person do you look up to the most and why?
I didn't know what I was going to say about this when I read the question, and I still don't know what I can say about this. I looked up to my parents. I looked up to my big brother. I looked up to people on television at times, certain cooking celebrities like the Urban Peasant, Yan Can. I looked up to Neil Peart, a drummer for Rush. I looked up to a lot of people. Right now, there's certain people I look up to, but for certain reasons. For example, I look up to Leo Laporte. Not as much now as I used to, but he taught me a lot about how to do this. Right now, my hero is Art Bell. He used to be on Coast to Coast Radio. Now he's got a new show called Dark Matter. And I look up to him. I love his radio technique, his vocal technique on when he's on the radio. I think it's wonderful. But I'm at the age right now where I don't look up to a lot of people, really. I'm at the age now where people are sort of looking up to me. So that's the best I can do with that one.
Poppy B says, "Hi Craig, have you ever heard of graph? And would you consider brewing one?"
No, I've never heard of that. And so I would, if I could get the ingredients and if it's something I think I would like, then sure.
Rico7472 says, "Hi Craig, this is Rico. Rico? I'm relatively new at this beer stuff, but I like to try different things right away. This last batch, I added 2 scoops of Tang Orange to make Rickard's White. Seems to work pretty well. What's the most creative recipe you tried with any beer kit?"
Well, my brewing career, again, as I said before, mostly consists of just brewing up kits to save money. I'm not a huge experimenter, I have to admit. But the thing that I've done recently is the what's now called the CraigTube Porter, and I didn't name it that, but some other people did. And it was some stuff I threw together with a Cooper's English bitter, and some grains I had, and some hops, and a package of of Windsor yeast. And I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. And man, you know what? That turned out probably one of the better home brews I've ever made. So,
Buckled L15 says, "Craig, we all know that you have inspired a lot of people in getting started in home brewing. But you are so popular and people have been following your videos and your casts since the beginning. Why do you think you have stayed so popular for so long?"
Well, first of all, this question would probably be better answered by somebody else, but well, first of all, I don't feel popular. Really, I mean, I understand. I see the numbers. I get it. I know what's going on. Okay, I never knew this was going to happen, and I just, it's like, wow. I still, every day I pinch myself, okay, so if you're asking me, if you're implying that I'm popular in this, game, then the only reason I could do for that or give you for that is that I enjoy it. I enjoy making the videos. I enjoy doing the live broadcasts. I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy helping people. I like the idea that there's people that have started brewing because of watching my stuff. God help them. But, I like to be liked. I mean, somebody called into my live broadcast last Friday, and he was from Australia, and he really had a lot to say about this, and I don't remember a lot of it. I just like taking it in, like, wow, it's difficult. I'm a modest guy, and I don't want this to go to my head, so I stay down to earth. I keep myself grounded, and I'm just a guy. I'm an honest fellow. I don't make stuff up. I don't try to, to con anybody. I have nothing to gain from lying or betraying anybody in this thing that we're doing here. I'm better off just being down to earth, honest, and forthright. and polite. And that's what I do. So if that's the best answer I can give you.
James says, hello, Craig. Odd question. Have you ever experimented and mixed two of your favorite cans together? Say like a Cooper's English Bitter or a Cooper's IPA. It probably sounds expensive, but it's probably the same cost as adding a tin of Cooper's malt extract and dextrose, which many people do. It would end up being a 3.4 kilogram kit. Maybe try in the future. Love your videos.
The reason why people use dextrose is because it's cheap. But you know, and it's when you start using two cans of like brand name pre-hopped liquid malt extract, you're looking at close to $40, you know, for just those. And then you still have to add some dry malt extract if you want a decent alcohol content. And a lot of people say, well, the hell with that. You know, if I can brew all grain for $20, and it's going to take me a few hours longer, but it's cheaper. So it depends on how much money your time is worth, and still, I mean, $40 for 5 gallons of beer is not bad. And certainly it would be an all malt beer, and it would taste better, richer, have a better head retention than adding sugar to a single can. So if you don't mind paying the extra money for the extra can, go for it. You can buy just plain liquid malt extract, you know, bulk, for a lot cheaper than you can get those cans for. And you can add that. But don't forget, when you double up your cans, if say you got a can of Cooper's IPA, and then you put another can of Cooper's IPA, not only are you doubling the malt, but you're doubling the hop profile. You know, and so it would be akin to brewing 2.5 gallons of a single can, cutting it, you know, the amount of water in half. You're doubling the color of the beer, the malt, you know, whatever malts they put in there, if they put some darker malts in there, and you're doubling the hops as well. So if you want to keep the same flavor, but stop using sugars, go out and buy yourself a few things of liquid malt extract. It's cheap. I can get mine for $6 for a kilogram of liquid malt extract. That's your best bet.
Jay says, approximately how much have you spent on homebrew equipment and kits, ingredients over the years? I ask as I'm quite new to brewing, just over a year, and I must have spent a fortune, but it's worth it.
I think there's two questions of this sort in this list of questions. I probably have a couple $100 worth of equipment. That's it. You know, I've got like 4 or 5 fermenters. I've got a couple of glass carboys, a plastic carboy. I've got a couple hydrometers, some thermometers, you know, some tubing. The kegs were very cheap because I got a deal on them. My CO2 tank, I only pay about $50 a year for it. When I get refilled, I get a new tank every year for $50, and it's a 20-pound tank, so it lasts, you know, a long time. It lasts over a year. So, you know, I haven't spent a lot. But as far as the amount I've spent on ingredients, you know, especially the Cooper's cans, well, I'm sure I've paid Cooper's mortgage by now.
Out of all the videos you have made, what one is your favorite?
They're all my favorite. When I put out a new video and I see the responses and I get, you know, positive reactions to it, that becomes my new favorite video. But I mean, you know, if you asked me that about my music, I could give you an answer. Which song is my favorite that I've written? It would be a tough answer, and I don't want to try to crank that one out right this moment. But the videos aren't really, they're not really artistically created. You know, they're just, you know, videos of me yakking and blabbing and doing stuff. So they're not like my children or anything like that. Like with music, it's like every time you write a song, it's like, you know, you just had a child. It's not as, obviously not as dramatic, but it's like that.
I've stopped trying to pronounce some of these names. I'm sorry. What do you foresee in advances for home brewers in terms of equipment and ingredients? Cheers, 17.
Well, that depends on where you are in home brewing. If you've got one fermenter and a bottling wand and you're doing like the cans, then I would say, get a bottling bucket, get a bucket where you can batch prime your beer before you bottle it instead of priming each bottle. I mean, you could do that if you want, and get I don't know, a bigger pot. I don't know, ingredients wise. I mean, it depends on what you're going to do. If you want to start doing a different method of brewing, then you're going to have to buy new equipment. You're going to have to get a wort chiller and a bigger pot and maybe a more accurate thermometer, and a mash tun and things like that. As far as ingredients goes, if you're just doing kits, start playing with hops. Start adding hops. Make a hop tea. Add that to your batch. Start playing with grains. Steep some two-row. It's not two-row. Crystal. Get some Crystal 60. Steep it. A couple kilograms of that maybe. Steep that in some hot water for, I've got videos about this. And take that water and add that to your batch. See what that does. And then do both hops and the grains. Try a mini mash. So get some grains, get some two-row grains and do a little mini mash. It's not gonna, you can't hurt anything, but you have to boil these things when you steep them like that. The water that you boiled to steep the grains in, because you have to sterilize it. I don't know. Yeah, that's my best guess. There is just do things from do a little bit at a time. Just say, okay, hops. What are hops? I didn't even know what hops were until I actually smelled some hops. Because you're drinking beer that doesn't have a lot of hops in it. You don't even know what they taste like. And then someone gives you an IPA or a double IPA, and you're like, okay, and now I know what hops are. Oh, I love hops. I'm a huge fan. All right, let's move to the next question.
Craig, besides your music career, do you or did you have a job of some sort? How do you make money to do your home brewing? I hope I'm not being too intrusive. It's just something that has been perplexing me. Thank you.